Hello and welcome to Fathoms Deep, a Black Sails podcast from Common Room Radio. I am Liz Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive.
And we're jumping into episode 11. Are we episode 11 now?
We are
right?
episode 11. Things are just getting more and more interesting every episode now.
More and more interesting. Again with the shifting sands of Nassau. I had totally forgotten. There were a couple of things that I had forgotten about this episode, including the fact that Flint does not know that our man Vane has taken the fort.
I know.
So that's a surprise to come home to.
Quite a surprise to come home to. Yes, sands have shifted. I know. I feel bad for you. I mean, there is a tiny bit of things on ships. Now I always pay attention to how much ship we get, but no moving ships today. Sorry, Liz.
But, you know, I got all that glorious, gorgeous office stuff of like the captain's quarters. I call it an office, but the captain's quarters of the warship are amazing. So gorgeous. So I just got to drool over that.
It is really stunning. I think that Flint got a serious upgrade when he took over the Man of War.
Yeah, that was quite the upgrade. Agreed. Good trade-in, son. You did it.
Good. I love it. I think last episode also it's like we're kind of like giving him encouraging words. I don't know if he really needs us to give him encouraging words, to be honest.
We'll be your Silver. Just look in awe at all the things that you're accomplishing.
Yeah, well, Silver has some different looks this time. We'll get to that. Okay, so our parts, the thing that I noticed that really binds this whole episode together is there's a whole lot of visiting.
Yes.
There's just characters visiting other characters.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Huh.
And I just kept noticing that. I kept writing in the notes, okay, so-and-so visits so-and-so, and now so-and-so visits so-and-so. Mm-hmm. So we really are just pretty much in Nassau and a little bit on the Fancy, which I always have to say that way. I don't know why I'm amused by that name still. So pretty much we have Vane visiting our lovely Gen X threesome. Lo visits Vane. Vane visits Lo. Eleanor visits Vane. Miranda and James visit each other in totally different time frames. Mm-hmm. So let's...
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Uh-huh.
Just a lot of visiting with different results for different people.
Prepare to board. Aye.
Okay, so I thought that this week we will start with Gen X.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, we left them in an interesting place.
We did.
And even though Jack gave his lovely speech and said, come to bed when you're done, I'm assuming this is the next morning.
Oh, do you think it's the next morning?
I don't know.
That is sad.
It could be.
I don't know.
I feel like it is because he woke up and was quite surprised that she wasn't there. But yeah, it's true. It could be that night she did come and then back to him, and then this day, I don't know. Doesn't really matter
either. It does make a little bit of a difference. Either way, he looked pained that she wasn't there beside him. He did.
Yeah. And he actually had to ask one of the women who work there, if they've been out. It's just he's not in an ideal situation.
No, that's pretty humbling. Yeah.
But Anne is in an ideal situation.
She is, actually. What a way to wake up.
Good morning, Anne Bonny. So what I wanted to say about that is Anne, is just her reactions.
She's lovely.
Yeah, she is lovely. And I felt like, we're just getting more and more glimpses into her. But did you notice, like, after they're done, Anne turns her back to Max, and she's just seems so vulnerable and confused.
Very vulnerable. That's exactly what she looks like. Her chin is quivering.
Yep. And she turns her back to Max, and yet she still, like, reaches over and pulls Max's hand to her.
Yeah.
So she's just a ball of vulnerability. Our like fierce warrior woman has now shown her underbelly, and we're watching it. And that was pretty much all I had to say about that. That was just super lovely.
Yeah.
And then we see Jack. Poor Jack.
I had poor Jack written down again too. That's 2 poor Jacks in a row. Poor Jack out looking for captaincy, and then poor Anne knowing it's her fault that he can't find it. He's lost his reputation.
Oh, and I noticed a little sound thing. So Jack's like, out in town, and you're hearing a lot of animal voices. But
yeah,
I only noticed this last time, like right when all of those people he's talking to, the potential crew members, like laugh at him and walk away. You actually hear a donkey
braying. Yeah, you absolutely hear a jackass.
Did you notice that
Yeah,
too?
I did notice that. As a matter of fact, I did.
Oh, it just yeah.
Sad day. Sad Jack.
I know. So yeah, then he's, their conversation after that, like, this is another example. Like, he's upset this time. I mean, he's not trying to parse his words, and yet he still comes off caring. I mean, this is just an amazing thing. Like,
it's true.
I mean, he said, what does he say? Like, I'm not bothered by the fact that she does a better job with the thing between your legs, but that she's, messing with the thing between your ears.
Right. Yeah.
Which is, of course, what Jack would be concerned about.
Right. Yeah. And he says that I can't help you. There's nothing I can do to help you when I'm on the other side of that door.
Yep.
Yeah.
He won't be on the other side of that door for long.
No. Well, and that's where Anne is showing her wisdom. Like, she knows that she can't trust Max, and that it clouds her judgment. It absolutely does cloud her judgment, which emotions and feelings always do. So, and I like that when she does invite Jack upstairs with her later, that then we see, when we first saw her with Max, she was still fully clothed. Like, there was no nudity that we saw from Anne. And then when she brings Jack into the room, she's the one who disrobes and who gets naked. And I think that she feels safe now that Jack is there.
Wow. You are totally right. That makes so much sense. I love that.
Yeah.
I guess that was not what I noticed, and I love that. That makes so much sense, that suddenly, because her other half is there with her, she's not scared in the same way.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which is a great thing to see after what we saw in the beginning of the episode, where she is so freaked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely.
Wow. Okay. I love that. Yeah, I'm just not really sure. I mean, I love that whole scene. I always love scenes that are wordless but tell you so much.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's clear that Jack, when Anne said, "What are you waiting for?" I mean, I feel like it was clear on his face that he thought she was inviting him up to be just the two of them.
Room.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then I just felt like the conversation that happened, not with Anne, because she turns her back to them and takes her shirt off and walks into the bedroom, but the conversation that happens wordlessly between Jack and Max is just fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
His
facial expressions are really great anyway. Yeah. So I love how he's like perplexed, unsure, bemused, aroused. Like, you see it all happen on his face.
and then he kicks that door closed, and he's like, "That's it.
Yep.
I'm on the other side of that door now."
Yep, you're right. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was just so. Yeah, it was just beautifully done. I mean, what you said about Anne is really amazing analysis of it. I was just appreciative of the acting and the way they did it. But yeah. that really makes sense.
Well, and it showed all the scars on her back too. So I think that was another side of that vulnerability as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense as well. And there is, when she takes off her shirt, Jack really looks at her back. I mean, he knows what it looks like, but I think he might have been surprised that she exposed all of those scars to Max.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So the other part of the conversation about them is their visitor. When Vane comes to visit, and Vane visits twice. So we have 2 visits from Vane.
Okay. Yep, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So the first visit, well, I love both of these visits, and they're very different. So first, Vane comes to visit Max. And he is looking for information. And I loved what he said. I'm just going to quote him real quick, what he said about the brothel. He said, he understood that this was, again, a place where men come with coins in their pockets and secrets in their heads and leave with less of both.
Yep, absolutely.
I love that. And that just really summed up beautifully exactly what we had already kind of known, but hadn't been articulated about what the brothel is about. And Max just sees right through him. She knows immediately.
She's a smart lady. Yeah. And it impresses Vane, which I like too.
Yes. Yeah. I liked it. He's like, wow, Jack and Anne just have no
They don't even know
idea what they're dealing with you.
Yep.
And I like that because, we know that Vane's smart because he wouldn't have gotten where he is without being smart. You can't become a captain by just being tough.
Yeah.
You have to be tough and smart. But it was nice to have this moment where we really saw, I feel like this whole episode, we really see Vane being smart.
Yes.
The way he's done all of this. Like, sure, okay, to Max, he's completely transparent in his goals. Because she, like no one else, understands his, love of Eleanor.
Yes.
And again, she always does everything. She's not just being smart. She does everything smart. Like, she doesn't say, oh, aha, I see that you're here about Eleanor. Like, she starts talking about Eleanor. And the part that breaks my heart is at the end when she says, I found a way to stop caring for her. Do you want to know? And he's just walking off, and he just so subtly and so quietly just says, no.
Yep. Well, I think that's his biggest thread to like his humanity sometimes is his love for Eleanor,
That makes a lot of sense. That's true. I hadn't thought about it that way. It's not just a weakness. It's actually a very... Right. It's when he doesn't have to be Vane, the like crazy badass pirate. He's just a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the thing that just strategically is amazing with Max is that when Vane hands her that purse, which is the purse that Lo gave him. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh, I totally didn't even
I'm
think about
positive
that.
It looks identical. So I kind of liked that because it felt like Vane was just trying to, rid himself of this dirty money. But he doesn't.
I can see that. Yeah.
He takes it back because Max negotiates something different. She says the money's generous. And the most brilliant thing. I mean,
it really is. Yeah. And it took me a minute to realize what was going on too, because I was like, what is he doing? Why is he doing this? And as soon as Max showed up, I was like, oh, of course this is her plan. Yeah.
So yeah, I love this because again, like Max is a strategic person, right? She's and she understands the importance of her alliance with Jack and Anne for her right now. And I just wanted to compare this to Silver. Like, this is a situation like she does something that is completely obviously good for Jack and Anne, but especially Jack. I mean, this is what Jack wants so terribly much. And of course it's good for Max. I mean, she comes up with an arrangement that works so well that is based on Jack's proposal. She makes it possible. And it's kind of like what Silver kept saying to Flint, like, you can trust me as long, if our interests are aligned, you can trust me to fight for you. I mean, not fight for you, but you know what I mean? Do stuff.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Fight in the smart, manipulative person sort of way, like to manipulate for you. And that's exactly what Max did here. I mean, she solidified her own position. She did something that could benefit all three of them. And at the same time, I think she's proving to them the same thing, that she's not just using them, she's aligned with them, which is different. So that's that. And then we have our lovely visit where Jack and Anne come in and Vane is sitting there waiting to sit with them.
So smart. And everybody in the brothel is just looking at them like, what is happening? Yep.
I know. Well, and especially Jack and Anne.
Right. Poor Anne thinks she's going to have to defend Jack to the death.
I know. Which is also so dear. Like, I really liked watching how she was like a cat ready to pounce to protect him.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this was the first time we really, really, really saw that. We've seen her be fierce in so many ways, but this was like she was being fierce just to protect the physical person of Jack Rackham. And I don't know. I just really liked that. And Vane is just, I don't know. He's just beyond. He's beyond. She's so cool. He's just, that's really all I can say is he's
awesome
so cool.
He is so cool. You're totally right.
I just love everything I said. I love everything the way he said everything. And he's brilliant. I mean, he just was so laid back, which was exactly the place, that was the role he needed to play, of just like, this is not a big deal.
Yep.
I'm just hanging out with you all because you are my friends, and I like and trust you.
Yep.
And I like that when he said to Mr. Hammond, "We hardly knew ye," he looked at Anne.
Huh? I didn't notice.
Oh yeah, he very markedly looked at Anne. So you know he's scolding her at the same time while doing this act.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're just so perplexed. It's just fun to watch them be so perplexed, and he's so poised. And then Max comes down and whispers in his ear, and that's when they understand what happened.
Yep.
And also he says no shit, which just seems to me so anachronistic, doesn't it?
I don't know, actually. Could be.
There's no way to know. I don't know enough about the way people spoke back then, but somehow it came to me like maybe this was something that just came out of Zach McGowan's mouth, and it just turned out so well that they kept it. I just really, I don't know, there's just something really, I just really love that moment.
Yeah.
And then, but the weirdest and most wonderful thing he says is he talks about the two of them, of Jack and Anne, and he says. Look at the two of you. Have every reason to run screaming from each other. You'll either be the death of each other, or we'll all end up working for you someday.
Yep.
So we're going to bring that up in the future.
Uh-huh.
We're going to remind people that he said that, and I'm not going to say which direction it's going to go, but he does say there's not a third option. It's one or the other. And I don't know. It's just a great scene. I'm not sure, how much depth there is in this, but it delights me.
Yes, it's a delightful scene. I completely agree.
All right, so let's move on now to more meatier topics. I think we are good with our Janex and our Vane appearance at their visiting them. Mm-hmm. And now we will move to Eleanor and her dangerous pirates.
Man.
Yeah. So we can start with when Ned Lowe visits Vane. And I have a question for you. So we see this bit in the beginning where Vane is fighting.
Yes.
And I remember the first time not being 100% sure if this is just sparring, or if we just they just pop us into the middle of somebody challenging him.
I think it's supposed to be sparring.
I think it is too, but I think that they make it kind of uncomfortable on purpose.
Yes, definitely.
You know what I mean? Because we're about to open up a scene where Vane, where there are moments where we see that his crew might not be 100% happy with him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Ned Lowe brings that up. I mean, I feel like you're right. It was definitely sparring, but they put just enough danger into it to put us in a slightly uncomfortable place before this conversation. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, that's part of his reputation. You can't trust him completely,
Right. Exactly. Okay, so now we have Ned Lowe being Ned Lowe talking.
And you're right about that underlying threat. That's not it's not a clear threat. He never says, "Hey, I'm going to kill Eleanor Guthrie," but he says everything but that. He makes it very clear that his intentions for her are the worst. Yeah, it's creepy.
It's brilliant and creepy. It's creepy because it's brilliant. I love the writing. I love the performance. I meant to remember the actor's name so that we could credit him. But it's just so subtle, the creepiness, because you can never put your finger on the thing that he says that makes it terrifying.
Yeah.
But all of it is. There's just this current
so
of terrifying.
Unsettling. Yeah.
Yeah, unsettling is right. And I do. I love the words that he uses. I love it. What does he say? Oh, right. He says that, there's always the person that you need, that is the person you don't want to cross. And then I actually love that Vane said, "Thank you for noticing that."
Thanks for noticing.
It's just, I don't know. Vane is just on
Chaz.
point this episode.
He is. You're right.
Chaz is doing us great service this episode. I just love every moment he's on screen, honestly. And then Lowe calls Eleanor the Guthrie woman. When he's checking to see, if Vane's past with her means that he would get in the way of whatever Lowe needs to do. And then Vane's, I don't know if he's quartermaster. I'm going to call him quartermaster because he's like the person who always seems to be hovering around next to Vane. So the guy who's hovering around next to Vane, he uses the same language. Like he says, well, I don't see why it's in our interest to care about the Guthrie woman. Like he uses the same. So I just felt like that was a moment. If he's showing Vane also in a very subtle way, like, not that he has allegiance with Ned Lowe, but even without saying anything, he's saying, dude, you definitely need to listen to this guy. Like we do not want this fight. And what I kept thinking was, that thing that Vane said to Eleanor, where he said, I needed to go get people who don't care if they do something, what Eleanor Guthrie would think.
Yep.
And this is the flip side of that.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yep. He picked his people, and they do not care about Eleanor Guthrie, that's for sure. Although I wonder too, like, what Ned Lowe thinks will happen if he does get rid of Eleanor Guthrie, because who is he going to sell to?
Well,
like that upsets the balance of trade.
It does, but he named all these ports. I mean, I just don't think he feels any allegiance to Nassau specifically.
That's a really good point. Yep, that's it. Okay, yep.
He's pissed off at her.
I retract my statement.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if he wanted to stay, maybe he would have to think, although he's made it pretty clear in his subtle ways. So I just don't think he has really any allegiance to Nassau, and it just doesn't really matter to him. And honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think, like, we've talked for 2 episodes now already about how he's kind of outside the frame of what we've learned to expect from pirates. And we learn to expect from pirates that they are thinking about business. And I'm just like, sure, his original reason for being mad at Eleanor is about business in theory, but Ned Lowe seems to me like he's not stupid. He's smart. He's obviously extremely smart. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure it's straight up business the way we have seen pirates be concerned is really his concern. I mean, he made it clear in the first episode that the reason his crew loves him is because basically he's terrifying. And that's really satisfying for them. I think, that's the whole point, is that he changed the rules of the game that we had learned so well in season 1. I'm just not really sure it cares. I mean, his answer is great when Vane brings up the street being upset, and he's like, well, I believe I've understood that the support for her consortium is tepid at best.
Yep.
I like his use of fancy language to be really terrifying. So yeah, I'm just not really sure he cares, is I guess the short version of that. And then I also like that he gives Vane that money and calls it tribute, which is not the rules of the game as we learned it.
Yeah, that's right.
I think he was not speaking to Vane or giving that to Vane at all. I think that that existed so that he could talk about how Eleanor had taxed them and it would have been heavier. And I think that was for the benefit of the quartermaster person of saying, look, this woman just cost you money because I would have given you more.
Interesting. I like that theory. Yeah. Okay. Because it did strike me as a little bit odd.
It is a little odd, and I think that was his point. Is like, I mean, I guess the implication is if Vane is the tough man, Vane is the man to not cross,
right?
And he gives him tribute once, maybe he would give him tribute again. And if the terms are better, they would get, he said a percentage. He said 10% for you.
Wow.
So, so he's brilliant. Basically, he's brilliant. He came in there,
manipulative, frightening.
Right. He had many goals, and he managed to succeed in every single one of them. But his main goal, which we'll bring up now when Vane visits him, was to see what's up with Vane.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Okay, so let's move on to that visit." I love this. I love this scene so much.
This whole scene is really awesome. Yeah, it's just cool to watch.
It is super cool to watch, and it's super cool to watch both of them playing each other and so positive that they have the upper hand.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Lowe believes he has the upper hand because he saw. I mean, he's like, I was a little bit worried about you and your crew supporting Eleanor, but he's like, well, now I can see that they think you're kind of pathetic.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which hurts because it's true. But it doesn't matter because it's true that because of Eleanor, he got that extra information about Abigail Ash, right? Abigail Ash,
right.
So it doesn't matter. But yeah, otherwise that would completely be accurate. So probably stung a little bit for our boy Chaz.
Yes, I'm sure it did, although he does not show it, and he is brilliant.
He's got those icy cool eyes. Yep. Ice cold.
I know. He was brilliant from the very first minute. I love when he says, "May I?" to ask to drink, and Ned Lowe hands him the glass and he starts drinking out of the bottle. He's just exerting his dominance.
Yeah, he's just pissing all over the guy's rug. Yep.
Exactly. That is what he's doing. He's just like, hello, I'm on your ship. You think I'm vulnerable, but I'm just going to piss all over your quarters right now.
Yep.
So that, it's just all these little details. It's all these little things of the way Vane plays this. And all he's doing is stalling for time. Mm-hmm. But I feel like he's probably having a really good time doing this.
I think so. Yeah. I think this is a pretty enjoyable evening for him, actually. Until he gets almost choked to death.
Whatever. I think that that was the price of admission and he was willing to pay it.
Yeah, that's fair.
He is Vane. So there's that, and then the whole offering of the partnership. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to point out thematically about Vane here.
Yes.
So when he's offering his partnership, he's like, well, I'm sure, you've heard that I recently lost my ship and my crew and this and that. And then he says to him, but my place is at sea. That whole fort thing was just temporary. And I just wanted to bring that up. Compare it to last week where Silver basically won over Flint by saying, I cannot wait to get away from the sea. Like all of this is for getting away from the sea, which we know Flint basically also wants to get away from the sea. So yeah, I just feel like this is again, we know that Flint and Vane are different, but I feel like we're going to over time now just start banking up examples of why they're different.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, Flint is a great pirate captain, but I'll just always go back to what Vane says more than once in this show. We've only, I think, heard it once so far, but Vane talks about proper pirates.
Yep.
Vane is a proper pirate.
He is a proper pirate. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. I was thinking the exact same thing.
This is what Vane wants. He wants the life of the pirate. And that's it. I mean, it's just a snippet in this, this scene of awesome Vane being awesome, but that one snippet I think is significant for our larger questions of who all these people are. But now we can go back to just the awesome stuff. So I love when he's like, okay, well, would you like to hear my proposal? And he's just like, sure. Like after Ned Lowe had already told him to basically, leave. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to take everything. I'm going to take your ship, and I'm going to take your crew, and I'm going to take everything from you. And and it's that cool kind of mafia thing where we see Vane saying this, and then we cut back and forth between that and his crew swimming. Okay, can we just say this? Like, they just swam out to that ship, climbed up. I mean, it's the same thing that Flint and Silver did. Like, who are these people that they
Completely
swim
badass.
in the open?
Yes. Pirates.
I know. I guess we just have a moment of pirate appreciation there where I'm just like, this isn't like the middle of the night. There's probably sharks in that water.
Right.
They just swim out to a ship, climb up. I mean, they've got to be a little bit tired, and yet they take the ship.
It's amazing. It's so cool.
It is amazing.
Very fun to watch.
So amazing. And then, I guess Vane understood that, well, I guess they heard stuff, right? And then there's that awesome moment where Ned Lowe says, well, what do I get? And he's like, you get a head start.
Yep.
Kind of.
Right. And he calls for Mr. Holmes. There's all this silence.
Mr. Holmes. I know.
Vane just like gives that look. I'm like, huh. I didn't hear anything. Did you hear anything? Mr. Holmes doesn't work here anymore. So great.
I know. Okay, so wait. Again, this is the second one where we're like, that line, awesome. I adore it.
Oh, yeah. So great.
Does feel like, again, a tiny bit anachronistic to
me.
A
little bit. Don't care.
Not that I care. No. Just pointing it out.
Yep.
Don't care because it's awesome. Right. I loved it so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Vane walks out carrying a
Ned
head.
Lowe's head. It's amazing. I love it. I know I should be grossed out, but I'm just like, yes.
Oh, I guess we didn't talk about the fight at all. The fight is very scary and amazing, right?
Yeah.
But I love when he walks out with that head. Like, I feel like from the beginning when we see Vane in this episode, there is this hint of insecurity, right?
Yeah.
Which we know is a thing with captains. We know captains have this problem when the crews aren't 100% happy with them. So we had the fighting, we had the quartermaster kind of siding with Lowe. I feel like this head thing was brilliant. This served so many purposes for him. Like, he could have just killed him, but he chopped off his head. It harkens back to what Ned Lowe did to Meeks, right? So there's that. He will, get to put it on the street on a pike in Nassau. So
which
there's
is
that.
Awesome. I angered Charles Vane.
I know.
What? The lady screaming in the streets as all the children cry. Man. What a day. What a time to be alive.
I was there the day that Charles Vane put a head on a pike in the middle of town. But the third, or I'm not sure, I didn't count, but I think the third purpose of this, which is brilliant, is he just gained back the respect of his crew.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He just showed, he came out covered in blood with a head.
Yep.
And this is going to do nothing if not remind them of how he convinced them to come with him in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're totally right. It's awesome.
That man's brilliant. I did want to bring up one thing. There was a funny Twitter exchange between Toby Schmitz and Zach McGowan where somebody had asked about, I wish I remembered. I think it was Black Sails Brethren asked Vane about Vane's memoir. And so they had a whole back and forth.
I remember
this.
I do remember that.
Where one of them said, well, I'm not sure if Vane actually is literate. So, Jack probably would have written it for him.
Right.
So do we think Vane is literate? Like, I was just so curious who wrote that. Like, it was in pretty print.
It was pretty in print. He must be. He can't be, right? He can't be.
No, I think it's really very unlikely.
That's a good question. I don't know. He's got a big crew now.
Yep. Although they don't seem like the most literate bunch.
True.
To be honest.
One of the prostitutes, maybe?
I don't
know.
They stopped along the way. They like got back to shore. And they're like, okay, we need someone who could write this note for us before we do this whole head thing.
I need a scribe.
Exactly. I don't know why I thought of that. It's just a silly little thing, but I did think of that because of this adorable. So everyone should just go find those two. Or it was like 2 weeks ago. I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, but it was pretty adorable and totally worth finding on Twitter. Okay, so Eleanor, right before the screaming and the head shows up, was having a chat with Scott.
That's right. And and Scott said, you need to decide where your loyalties lie and who you trust.
Exactly.
And then she gets Ned Lowe's head on a pike, and it becomes quite clear who she trusts completely.
Or at the very least, who she wants to have sex with right now.
Yes, at the very least.
No. I don't mean to diminish that. And we're going to talk more about her exchange with Flint soon.
Yeah.
I think she, I don't know if up until this moment she had been aware that she was choosing Vane. She did, obviously. I mean,
I think she realized it when, Flint called her out on it.
Oh, yeah.
When he said, when he explained what happened with Gates, more or less, he's like, I am all in. Are you all in or not? So
exactly.
I think that's when she realized, and she tried to cover for herself a little bit, but you could see it. You could see the flicker on her face where she was like, I'm not willing to to go to the lengths that Flint will go to, obviously.
Exactly.
But she still has.
Don't she?
She has feelings for Vane, pretty clear.
She does. She does definitely have feelings for Vane, and I think she's very confused by them. I mean, I think that this episode is an episode where Eleanor continues. Sorry, and I did group her conversation with Flint into the Flint section, so we will talk about that in a second. But
sure,
I feel like you really see her conflict here. I mean, she thought she knew what her allegiance was, and she suddenly is maybe shifting, and I think it's extremely confusing for her. But at the same time, I do think, like we've seen her do before, when Vane does something, kind of heroic for her in his dark heroism.
His very dark heroism, yes.
It is. But when he does something heroic for her, that just does it for her. And I wanted to bring up now. What? Sorry?
Nothing. I was just going to say she's always she's always putting up this front of all of this strength that she can't always back. So when he comes in to back it for her, and it's a sign of his loyalty when she has no loyalty from her father, when she has loyalty from Scott, but she doesn't trust it because he has been owned by her family. Like, that's different. It's a different kind. And even though she says to him, I never thought of you that way, it's still different than someone who just of their own free will and choice sacrifices for you and risks for you to protect you.
Well, and Ray, I wanted to bring up the thing I was saying last week, that Eleanor, she had the same conversation with Vane that she had with Scott, where she didn't believe that his loyalty was to her as a person, not her as the boss of commerce.
Yeah, for sure.
And then she said at the end of the last episode, "Prove it to me. You want me to believe that you care for me? Prove it."
Yes.
And he just did. Like, this was the first moment, I feel like, where Eleanor finally broke through that wall. She finally understood that there was a person who cares about her as a person.
Yeah.
Like, this was not the smart choice for him. Like, yeah, sure, we'll see how this plays out with the asset, with Abigail Ash, but it's clear, just like it was clear to Max, it's clear to Eleanor that he used that as a pretense, just the way she handed it to him as a pretense.
Yep, absolutely.
I think this episode was where she saw that Flint cares about her as a partner for a goal, but not necessarily as a person. And Vane is the one who cares about her as a person. And
yeah, although I think he does a little bit, if only because as soon as she came up and hugged him, he said right then, he didn't wait till they get to the office. He said right then, I didn't get it.
No, and I think this is part of what happens with Flint. I mean, he has a similar issue that people don't see him as a person.
Yeah.
He's done such a job of constructing Captain Flint.
Yes.
That it's very hard for the person there, the caring person, to be visible to anyone but Miranda.
Yeah. Yep.
But we'll get into that part. But what I wanted to talk about is Eleanor's visit to Vane. I really noticed in the sex this time that she wow.
Go ahead, Daphne, you can do
it. They start face to face, and then she offers up her backside to him.
That's right. She puts herself in the submissive position.
Exactly. I mean,
and that's saying a lot about her care and her trust for him.
Well, and her change of attitude towards him. Like, remember the first time they had sex? Like, you were the one who brought up that this was kind of a battle for dominance.
Yes.
The way that they were having sex with each other. And this was a moment where she said, you know what? You get it. It's yours.
Mm-hmm. And it was on her terms. And he was, it was lovely.
Right. No, it was
in its way.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't sex that was at all disturbing. Like the first time we saw them had sex, I found that one very disturbing. This one was not disturbing. May not be everyone's style, but it felt like something that they were both doing because they both wanted to be doing it the way it was happening.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which, in my book, that's all I need from a sex scene is to feel like we have consenting adults consenting.
Yep,
and so basically. I'm happy for them. And then, we can talk about when they wake up in a little bit. I don't really have much to say about the Abigail Ash. I mean, he takes her down there. So now she knows about it. I mean, I feel like that was more about plot than it was about character.
I don't think so, actually.
Okay,
because
great.
Remember, she says, "What's wrong?" And he says, "I have to tell you something." Because if Eleanor Guthrie finds out that he is holding some teenage girl captive after everything has happened with Max, he could lose her again.
Oh, that's so true.
He just has to
he
be
needs to not
upfront. Yeah.
No, that totally makes sense. He needs to not have sex while hiding something from her again.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That totally works for me.
Yeah.
The one thing I loved about it is that she's describing it, and he's describing what he wants to do to her, and she's so honestly worried for him.
Yeah.
And then he does say, "Eleanor, I'm not asking permission. I know what I'm doing." And so I do like the exchange, but you're right. This is actually an important character relationship moment for them. Yeah, that totally works for me. And I think that's all I need to say about them. Part of me at this episode, part of me just wants things to work out for them.
I know. Yeah. This is probably the most I've ever liked Eleanor is in those scenes. Although she's awful with Miranda.
Yes, we'll get to that in a minute.
She's awful.
She's okay. So let's move on to that because that was the next thing I wanted to talk about.
Let's talk about it. Man.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, she is awful, and Miranda is so poised and amazing,
poised and classy and gracious and lovely. Mm-hmm. And smart. Smart lady too.
I know. And yeah. And the thing that I wanted to tie into what we were just talking to is I feel like this is the first step in the stages of Eleanor understanding during this episode that Flint might not be the partner that she thought.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just wanted to start. I really wanted to just go through the parts of this because I love this scene so much. I mean, Eleanor really makes me angry, but I just love this is my favorite Miranda yet.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. Yeah.
And this whole episode is just amazing. I mean, this is just Miranda being, I think this is probably where I fell in love with Miranda.
Really? Interesting.
I mean, maybe earlier, but this is like, she's just, I just adore her here. Okay, first of all, let's start with those awesome sleeve guards. Did you notice that when she was like out doing her farm chores,
yes.
she has these like these white fabric things that go over her sleeves? I really love those. I kind of want those.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay. So there's that, but that's not a thing of substance. That's just something I like. So I just, Miranda, and we should remember, like, poor Miranda. Okay, we remember she's lonely. Yes. We know she's lonely. Like, finally someone that she could maybe have a real conversation with came to visit her.
Right. And she says, I feel like we're old friends. James talks about you all the time. Oh, of course, I think of him as Captain Flint.
Right. I know. Well, that was actually the first tick in a way. It was that first moment where she's like, and she didn't do it intentionally. She wasn't trying to alienate Eleanor. But I'm sure for Eleanor, that was a bit of a thing where she's like, James, I mean Captain Flint.
Right.
And she was so trying to make a connection, and she said she was proud of her. Like, she's, we know that Miranda's older than Eleanor, whatever Eleanor's age happens to be. She was just trying to be like, sweet big sister making tea, and they're going to hang out, And Eleanor is just horrible. Like, what she says, where she's awful. She's
really
like, what does she say?
So unremarkable. Is that what she says? Something like that?
Yes,
As
that's what she says.
No comment at all.
Right. She's like, do you know what I heard about what he tells me about you? Nothing.
Yeah. It was
She's
awful.
horrible
it was
there.
So catty and horrible. Yep.
And then Miranda manages to put her in her place in such a great, in a generous but pointed way. I mean, she's not being a pushover, but she's making a very good point. And the one thing I want to say is that there's a lot of interesting use throughout this episode of people using a common possessive to show their allegiance, and then not always getting what they think they're getting. So Eleanor says to Miranda, when she's blaming her, she says, "You conspired with my father to betray our trust."
Yes.
And she meant her own and Flint. And Miranda never contradicts her through all of this until she talks about his demons. And I have to quote.
Great speech. It's a great speech.
I have to quote it if you don't mind, because I love it so much.
Go ahead.
Okay, I did edit a little bit. So she says, "Every man has his torments. You perceive the effects of Flint's demons, echoes of their voices, but I know their names. I know I was there when they were born." It gives me chills even when I say it.
Yeah.
Within the chorus of his torments, none of them look or sound like me.
Yep. It's an incredibly loyal thing to say.
Oh my goodness.
And it reminds Eleanor of how little she actually knows Flint. And of course, she doesn't know how little she knows Flint.
Right.
But I mean, Miranda knows James McGraw / James Flint, Captain Flint, on like a soul level. I mean, they have gone back some time, and we'll see more of some of what they share. So yeah.
Right. And it just, I mean, the part that, she's essentially saying, you don't know this man, but she's not saying, right, like you said, she's not saying it in a mean way.
No.
She just wants her to understand, like, her own role for him, because Eleanor basically demanded of her. She's like, I don't understand why he is allowing you to be like this, why he's allowing you to betray him. And
I like when she says, I don't believe that I did betray him.
Absolutely.
And what's she saying? I don't think at his best that he believes it either, or something like that.
Yeah, if he's being honest with himself, he doesn't
believe it.
He doesn't believe it either.
Yeah, that was good too.
I know. It just
human relationships are so complicated, Daphne.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is very true, and I feel like this is a moment where I feel like, of all of the people we know, Miranda might be the only one who actually sees. I mean, we've definitely seen her lash out.
Yes.
We've seen her be unreasonable. But this is a moment where I feel like she has so much more understanding of human nature than anything we've seen up until now. Like, sure, people understand human nature to manipulate it.
Right. Well, again, I'm glad that you like her so much in this episode. I actually don't care for her in the flashback scenes.
Okay, well, that's right. That is what it is, and we'll get to that soon.
She's doing the same, yeah. She's porch sexing again, and I just don't like that.
Well, okay, we'll have to argue that in a minute when we get there.
Sure. All right. Walk me through it, Daph.
Because I think that one's different. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I need to say about this scene. I don't want to leave this scene because I love it so much.
Okay.
The last thing I wanted to say was that Eleanor did, she said, "You owe me."
Yeah.
And she wants this introduction to Underhill. And I love Miranda after this whole exchange that she just says very graciously, "I'll try." I mean, she's just good. She's good. And Eleanor's being bad.
Yeah, for sure.
And it just is this really, really beautiful hint, foreshadowing of stuff that we know is out there. We know that this is stuff that we're now going to understand because we've gotten these flashbacks. But it's such a beautifully haunting description of what we're going to learn.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's talk about Flint visiting Eleanor. So this is the other part of it. So this happened after that. So I feel like Eleanor's already feeling maybe a little vulnerable about her relationship with Flint. She went from our trust to you don't really know what's going on with this man that you think is your partner.
Right.
And he comes and he says he didn't get the gold. And I know we talked a little bit about this. I'm going to try not to cover stuff we already covered. But yeah, he's angry with her. And you were right. Like he feels, well, I don't know how much he feels it. He uses the fact that he killed Gates to try to convince her that she needs to side with him against Vane, even though he knows she sabotaged Hornigold's. But I really feel like it's very clear that he's using it. I don't feel, it's funny, I generally, like with Dufresne last episode, I really felt like Flint was also using Gates, but he was speaking the truth. The reason why I feel like he was really using it is because, okay, so he's criticizing her. She says the sacrifices were too great. He instantly goes into talking about Gates. He doesn't say, well, let me tell you about sacrifice, but he does start just talking about Gates. So it seems like maybe he's just suddenly sad and telling her this story. But when she says that she's sorry that he went through that, he instantly snaps into, okay, so we agree. Like he was just he was so eager to get to like exacting a promise from her that he didn't play this well. Like he usually does. He didn't play this well this time.
I see, and I didn't necessarily see it that way. So that's interesting. I'll have to see it again because to me, I guess with that exchange with Eleanor, he was really actually treating her as an equal. Like this was the one person on Nassau who was in agreement with him, who saw his plan for what it was, and who was willing to make whatever sacrifices were necessary to make this happen. And then when the rubber met the road and she wasn't there and she didn't actually follow through to the extent that he followed through, I think he was genuinely disappointed.
Oh, I think he was genuinely disappointed, but I think he also, and we know that he went there specifically. He had already talked to Hornigold. Yeah. And we know that he specifically was trying to figure out what was up with her because he comes back to Hornigold and says, you were right. I can't tell where her allegiance is. Yeah. Like, so he had an agenda. This was not just, a genuine exchange.
Okay. That's fair. All right.
I just felt like everything he did was very deliberate.
Yeah.
And again, we have this whole thing with Our, like when he's trying to convince her, he says, He says, I did what was necessary for our plans. Like he's implicating her in the fact that he killed Gates.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Yeah, that's a good call. Boy, no wonder she needed some recreational activities after that hard day. Huh?
And this is what I'm saying. It's like after learning from Miranda, this idea that she's only perceiving the effects of what she thinks is his personality, and then him, being the way he's been and, not doing a great job of subtle manipulation.
Right.
And then Vane kills Lowe for her. Seriously, who's she going to choose?
Yeah, totally fair.
And I feel like this is the first time. I mean, I just feel like Eleanor is kind of having a personality break in a way, and not in a way that's like narratively problematic. I mean, in a way where up until now, she's always chosen what's strategically good for her business.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And somehow the events while Flint was gone and these conversations she has and what Vane did, I feel like for the first time ever, she's choosing her allegiance based on her person, not based on her business.
Okay.
And I think, going forward, that makes sense. And, this will be, again, this is going to be an interesting little bit for Eleanor to see where how this plays out and where this goes. But I feel like this is new ground for her.
Yes.
She's choosing for herself as a woman, not for Eleanor Guthrie of Guthrie Holdings. Okay, so now, even though we've talked about Flint quite a bit, I would like to really talk about Flint now.
Okay.
So we'll go more or less how it happens in the show with our, 1705, 1715 back and forth. And this is actually how the episode starts. We start with James and Thomas. And we really start looking at this really kind of terrifying drawing in a pamphlet.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right?
At the very beginning.
Right. So this is the propaganda against the pirates. I just wanted to point out, did you notice that the pirate has spiky teeth?
I didn't.
Like our friend Joshua?
I did not notice. That's great.
I just love that. I thought that was a great little detail. I have no idea if that's a historical actual pamphlet. The governor, I looked it up. The governor is not he's not a historical governor,
okay.
The one that Thomas is talking about. But the concept, I'm sure, is pretty close to what happened, is that the governor on the one side is taking bribes and on the other side doing propaganda in London against the pirates that would strengthen his position as far as England's concerned, that they would want to support him for fighting pirates. Brilliant. So Thomas brings up, the possibility of appointing an honest governor, and James says the problem is keeping him honest.
Yes. What stands between him and honesty? Well, the Atlantic Ocean. I really liked that. But it was such a great speech, this idea that, you put a man on an island and you give him power. It doesn't take him long at all before he realizes that the power basically has no limit. And I like to think better of men and of mankind. But
yes,
I don't know. I mean, that's a valid point, actually. I mean, accountability is so important. It's there for a reason. And yeah, I mean, an island.
Right.
And this idea that you're in charge, dude. Yep. Stuff's going to go down.
And
absolute power corrupts absolutely. Is that how it goes?
Absolutely. And absolutely. And I think that the distinction we can make is it doesn't say that every person would be corrupt. It's saying that a person who already has power. So this is, you put someone there who, someone who was appointed a governor is someone who's already a politician, somebody who already had sought power. So you put that person on an island with the Atlantic Ocean between them and the people who are overseeing them. And that person has. So this is different. It's not saying your guy who's a tailor, you put him on an island and he's going to suddenly be corrupt.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do see what you're saying. I do. Yes,
I think there is a difference there.
Yeah.
and it's a great conversation. I wish, I could have a whole TV show of just like Thomas and James talking philosophy, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy the way they talk to each other.
I do too. Yep. And I enjoyed
right.
all of the Dimples McGraw in this episode. We got a lot of really good smiles from our friend James.
We do. I have gifs of all of them.
Bring them on.
I know. He's showing his serious dimples. As is Miranda. Like, she walks in, and I just feel like it's such a beautifully, I mean, we saw her already, but seeing her in her home with her husband, like, she walks in, she's so happy. Just look at past Miranda compared to Nassau Miranda, and it's just, I don't know, it's like a breath of fresh air to see her. She's joking, she's hugging him, she's witty, she's so much fun.
It's true. Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into soon, what I call carriage Miranda, but
carriage Miranda.
But whatever, library Miranda is just a lovely person. And so I wanted to get into the whole thing with the books. So,
Okay.
So I did a tiny bit of research. I've never actually read any Cervantes, but I did a tiny bit of research. So there's this lovely thing where, she and James joke about Thomas, being Thomas. And then she goes to the bookshelf and she gets him a copy of Don Quixote. And she says, this would be very helpful in dealing with my husband.
Right.
And then Thomas says, well played, dear.
Well played, right? Like it's a joke between them.
It is a joke between them, and they've included James in their joke. And so I wanted to talk about, the next thing that we immediately from there transition to Flint in the captain's quarters in a Spanish man of war. So the books are for the most part Spanish. And he's in this quiet place thumbing through the books, and he picks a book by Cervantes to give her.
Oh, I didn't realize. Okay. Wow.
I looked it up. I did want to say a side note. Our friend Carla on Twitter told me ages ago when we were talking about Black Sails, and I tried to find the tweet. One of the books there, she's from Portugal, and one of the books there is actually a Portuguese book about ships or trade. I don't remember.
Oh, that's cool.
But it's actually like it would have been a book of that time. Wow. And she made a point of telling me that ages ago when she was watching Black Sails. So thank you, Carla. I'm not representing this well, but it's just a really cool little thing to notice about the production, that they're being so kind of careful and wonderful about details like that. Okay, but back to Cervantes. So the book, Don Quixote, I mean, I knew this a little bit, but I did look it up just to make sure. Don Quixote is the story of a man who loses his sanity and starts a quest to revive chivalry and bring justice. And the adjective quixotic.
Yes, quixotic.
Comes from Don Quixote. I mean, that's literally derived from there. And that means to foolishly, what is it? To be foolishly impartial, especially in the pursuit of ideals.
Yep. I'll take it.
So basically, Miranda just, told a really good joke using a book. And I love that. That was just, smart. I feel like intimate. This is this beautiful window into their world and the way they relate to each other, and how she just included James. And then we see James in 1715 pull a Cervantes book called, I'm going to try to get the pronunciation even remotely correct about this, La Yalatea. I think that's how it's pronounced. I looked it up, which is the story of two men who are in love with a woman. And one of them is rural, but very eloquent. And the other one is of her same station.
Well, I'll be gall darned. That's brilliant. Oh, how
I'm just
nice.
I know. I'm just not sure I could love this thing more.
Wow. And his little inscription that just says, I'm sorry.
I know. Okay. And I definitely want to talk about that at the end when we get to his speech. But what I adored about this initially is just, we see, we already got this sense of their past, of their common bond.
Yeah.
And this is this beautiful reminder of it, that she started this game of speaking to each other through book choices.
Yes.
And he did the same thing. And again, for me, this really reinforces the idea I have now, which I didn't have initially, that these flashbacks are really windows into what Flint's thinking about. Mm-hmm. That they're not just informative flashbacks for our sake, but they're actually are really relevant to what's going on in his mind at the moment. Like he's thinking about this exchange where she gave him Don Quixote.
Right.
And then he picks Cervantes for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's sweet.
I know.
Well, and I love when he comes to the house to give it to her, and he looks in the window, and he sees that she's got a friend there, and there are children there, and he gives that little chuckle of surprise. And of course, we had that reminder there in the opening sequence where they did the previously on or whatever,
right,
where she had said there's no love here, there's no joy here, and he looks in the window and sees that maybe those things are still possible,
right?
Maybe,
but not for him.
So he steps away.
That Captain Flint can't be part of that,
right? Oh dear me.
I know that breaks my heart. I mean, he was so happy for her, and he left her that book, but there's just the sense that this is not a domain for Captain Flint.
Yeah,
this is
he's outside that world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's trying. He's fighting.
He's looking in the window.
He's fighting for that world.
Yeah.
I mean, this is his goal: is to fight for the dream of having a world like that he could re-enter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When he takes his shovel or his oar, and when he takes his oar into the interior, but Captain Flint has no place in that house when that's what was going on there.
Yep.
So I just feel like, that porch scene is just, you see James of the past and James of the present, and just all of that kind of thrown into one place because he's holding that book and he knows he can't go in.
Yeah. Oh,
I know. Again, a man
tragic
alone.
Hero, a man alone. Mm-hmm. It's not good for a man to be alone.
Right. It just, I could go on forever about that porch scene, but we'll not do that.
No.
But there's, I've just been listening to actually the Harry Potter seminar of Stary Wonk of our friend Alistair Stevens. Drink. And he's talking a lot about liminality, and I feel like that is exactly what we see here, is that James is existing between his pirate self and his James self, like his Flint self and his James self, his past self and his present self, and bringing that book to that porch really just brought all of those things to the one place. And it's an uncomfortable place. It's not a place he knows how to inhabit. He knows how to be one of those things or the other. And right now, really, it feels like all he really knows how to do is be Captain Flint. He remembers that other person. He remembers that time fondly. And he's drawing from it.
Right. But it's behind
right now.
Him. Yeah.
Right now, he is not that person.
Man.
Yeah. Bittersweet.
Right.
Bittersweet. Everything's bittersweet. Okay, so now we'll get to a little sweeter. So when Flint, I get so confused these days about what I should be calling him in any given moment. When Flint, it was in his quiet quarters with his Spanish and Portuguese books, he was interrupted hearing all of the ruckus outside. And we got to see what Silver's been up to. So maybe some time has passed. Now that we were thinking about when we were thinking about Jack and Anne, maybe some time has passed because we see Silver, he's doing his daily report, but it's already become a tradition. Like everyone's stomping their feet the way he did.
Yeah. So it has, yes. Okay. Yep.
So like they're in, like they're not, we saw them get drawn into this.
Yeah. Well, his wounds from getting beaten up have healed over just a little bit. Too. His black eyes looking a little better. Yeah.
That's true. Okay. So time has passed.
Yeah. Not long, but a few days maybe.
No.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it was really it was fun to see Silver. I mean, he's being very calculating when they're, when he's being intentionally joyous as part of the act that he's doing. Mm-hmm. And then there's moments where, especially right at the end where, he's dead serious. Mm-hmm. When he sees Flint in a distance after he's, relayed Flint's plan. I mean, that's the other thing here is that this is shifted from gossip to now what he does is the official relayer of what Flint wants them all to agree to. Mm-hmm. And we have the one person getting upset about it, saying, wait, we're supposed to vote on this. I mean, he's not being, it seems like most of them understand why they're not pulling up to the bay,
right?
with those giant sails with crosses on them. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's interesting that Silver is now doing his report in service of Flint. I mean, they are full on partners now.
Yeah.
And we'll see other things that show us how much they're really partners now. So yeah, we should touch quickly on Flint and Dufresne as much as I don't want to talk about Dufresne, but I think, there's a few important things here. I don't know if I understood from the last episode that Dufresne is the quartermaster with that boat, but I guess that's what it is. Dufresne is the quartermaster now.
Oh, must be. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Because he's talking to him like the quartermaster and he's saying his plan. And when Dufresne says, well, the people aren't going to like this, they're going to push back. And he's like, well, you push back against them.
Back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. He's definitely quartermaster. I didn't even notice. Yep.
Right. And then Flint brings up having the Vanguard start quartering in his quarters. Mm-hmm. And Dufresne sees right through
it, but nothing he can do about it. Yep.
Nothing he can do about it. And we, I feel like we've got confident Flint back now after the whole thing. It's just like, he's like, oh, well, I see what you're doing. You want them to be loyal to you. And Flint does not even answer. He's just like, pause. Okay, I'm just going to continue my explaining to you what's happening now. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to go back to 1705 again. So now we're going to get to the part where it's going to be an interesting conversation about Lady Hamilton, our friend Miranda, and her past self. Okay, so we have another visit. Lady Hamilton visits Dimples McGraw.
Yeah. Who is shirtless and nervous.
He is.
As he should be.
Oh my goodness, he's so uncomfortable.
He is. And that's another reason I don't like Miranda in this scene, because he is uncomfortable and she is not honoring his wishes. She is pushing her agenda and I don't like it.
Okay. Let's go through the whole thing, and I'm going to argue that in this case, unlike with Pastor Lambrecht, she is actually pushing his agenda as well.
As it happens, let's
go through it. Let's go through it. Okay. So she invites him to some Duke and Duchess's house to look at some Egyptian artifacts, and he finds this very inappropriate.
Right.
And she says, "What, would you not enjoy my company?" And he says, "That's beside the point." And then we get to gossip. Mm-hmm. So basically, this is about gossip, which, again, this is one of our civilization things.
Right. Uh-huh.
So they exist within the civilization of London, but she's pushing the boundaries of that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so she has her little speech about happiness and caring what the neighbors think, and she says she understands that, you know, clearly he's heard the gossip about her because he seems so uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, look, you know, I love my husband and neither of us are concerned about this. I believe her.
Yeah, no, it seems true. Mm-hmm.
We know that we've learned already that Thomas Hamilton is not traditional. He likes to use first names.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about how the roots of problems are in the leaders, not in the pirates.
And they talk about these salons that he has. Yeah, that
exactly.
are radical.
That are radical, right.
Mm-hmm.
So I 100% believe her. I don't think she's being dishonest here.
No, I agree.
And then when we get in the carriage, she has her little speech about two kinds of men. She says there are those whose sense of duty forces them to leave permanence and identity. And then there's those for whom going out to sea that's the attraction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The two kinds of men who go to sea. Mm-hmm.
Right. And what does he do in response? He gives her a wicked dimple smile.
He does. It's a good one. It's a real good one. Uh-huh.
So, I will go on to what she says next about him, which he also affirms. She then says, I think you're someone who is very good at managing how you are perceived and getting what you want without anyone knowing how you did it or anyone even knowing it happened.
Yep. Very insightful and very true. Yep.
Exactly. So
I'm sure it impressed him. It appeared to impress him. Mm-hmm.
It definitely impressed him, and he even mocked her for being a little shy after that. Mm-hmm. Once we got to this level of openness, he actually mocked her for being a little embarrassed to continue speaking. And then she says, perhaps you're more concerned with perception, what people think we're doing than what we're actually doing. And that's when he grabs her hand.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying, whether we like what's going on here or not, whether we think this is appropriate or not, I think she opened a door for him to be his true self, and that the yes, he was taken off guard. Her showing up at his house is the last thing he expected. And he didn't know what to make of this because of rules of propriety, because of gossip and civilization. But she somehow saw through the fact that deep down, he doesn't give a shit about that stuff.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. That's certainly the story that we're told. I agree.
So that's why I'm saying, I mean, again, whether we like her behavior or not, I don't actually have a problem with it because, again, this goes to the same thing. I feel like this is a situation where two consenting adults are consenting.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yep. Eventually he consents.
Right. Well, I think he would have consented earlier if he just wasn't so concerned about where this was going. But somehow in the conversation, he started to understand that she's actually a kindred spirit.
Do you think if the gender roles were reversed, that it would seem predatory?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think that if the gender roles were reversed, I would think it's predatory. And I'm going to put a caveat there.
And still eventually consensual.
Sure. No. Yeah. That's not my caveat at all, actually.
Okay.
If this was set now, I would be troubled by it even as it stands. The rules in 1705 were so different that it was the job of a man to protect a woman's virtue.
Ah, okay. All right.
So this idea, I mean, with all of my feminist stuff, I think still intact, I feel that the only way this sort of interaction, this freeing of norms could happen is if the woman initiates it.
Okay.
That in 1705, it would have been a dastardly deed for a man to do this, but for a woman to initiate it, it's actually empowering for her.
Empowering. Okay. All right. I like that. I buy it.
Okay. Everyone call me out on this if you think I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
you're right. Yeah.
May have
You
just
asked for
opened
that now.
myself up to a lot of stuff. But I do think that the period that, again, what is it that Lonnie and Alistair say? Reality is no defense for fiction.
That's right. Uh-huh. That's a
But
good one.
I do think that reality is a defense for politics.
Right.
Because we're not talking about the fictional strength of this scene right now. We're talking about the politics of it.
Right.
So I do think that I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it in this situation. And yes, I would not be okay with it if it was a man.
Right.
And a man wouldn't... I don't think a man in 1705 would go about it the same way, because nobody was concerned about him, what gossip was happening about a man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. There are some situations, and we'll get to those, where
Right.
gossip about a man is very dangerous, but not in this situation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, I see this as, again, I don't know if I love her tactics. I'm not sure if there were any other tactics she could use to convince him that this was actually okay with her to do this, because he was so concerned with outward appearances.
Right. I see that.
And which is a different conversation than whether we think this is okay thing for them to do.
Right.
I'm choosing not to judge them on that. I mean, I just, she, maybe because of stuff I know, maybe because it doesn't bother me in the moment, maybe because I believe her when she says that Thomas doesn't have a problem with it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I might have to, in the future episodes, investigate that in my own heart for how I feel about it. I never had a problem with it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, this is a different Miranda than the one we know.
It sure is.
Yeah, it is a different Miranda. But part of me, I think mostly my reaction to this Miranda is just, I'm just so happy for her that she's happy.
Ah, yeah, I can see
or
that.
At least outwardly seeming happy. I don't know.
Right.
She's not living in solitude.
Yes. Yeah, she's not isolated.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that was always my main reaction to these scenes with her, is just that. Just, her past life.
Yeah, her joyfulness that she has here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Joyfulness, playfulness, confidence, just,
yes.
I don't know. Pretty dresses.
Beauty. Yeah. That's valid. Yes.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot, and I really I have one thing I wanted to bring up about Flint and Silver. We talked already about Silver and his daily reports. Now, I wanted to talk about Silver at the end, right before Flint gives his big speech about not backing down and not compromising with Vane. Silver seems honestly unhappy with him. The first unhappiness is that Silver seems really exasperated with him that he's bringing that book to Miranda. So that's one thing we don't need to get into right now. But when Flint gets back, Silver says, okay, I told the men what you want, and they're not happy. And Flint said, good. And Flint had already told Silver to tell, he's like, Silver got all these supplies, and he's like, toss them. Tell them that Vane stole them. So I guess there is more. There is something. There are a few things actually that we need to talk about here. One is that Flint is talking to his crew using terms that generally civilization uses for pirates, but in relation to Vane.
Yes.
He did not say monsters. I was waiting for him to say monsters, but he said animals.
Madman.
He said madman. He used all of these terms, and he's manipulating that he told Silver to get rid of the supplies.
Right.
He said, he's very clear. He's like, good. I want to rile them up. I want them really mad.
Yeah.
And again, he gives this rousing speech, a very Flint speech, where he's talking about how Nassau doesn't even exist the way they thought of it, and how he's going to rain holy hell down. And again, you keep cutting back to Silver, and Silver's looking down. Silver's looking pained. Silver's looking unhappy.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I have an answer to this. What do we think? Why do we think Silver's upset about this? I mean, I'm sure he wants to rush back and not deal with all this and rush back and get the gold. But Silver's a smart man. He knows that if they get the gold and bring it back, and Vane can just take it from them because he has the fort. I mean, that's a good argument. That's that makes sense to me, what Flint's motivation is. Why do we think Silver's unhappy? I don't know if either of us will come up with the answer. Maybe it just needs to be a question.
That's one just leave out there, I think. Yeah.
And I don't know if I noticed this in the past, but it was so, I watched it.
I mean, unless he's just concerned about his standing with the crew, like how he's going to spin this to make it to where his reputation is still all right.
Sure. That totally makes sense. That makes sense of like, you just gave me an impossible thing to sell. Although Flint's doing a pretty good job of selling it himself, to be honest. But it is a crazy thing. I mean, it is a crazy thing. Like the thing that keeps Nassau safe. We know that Nassau had been attacked by Spain in the past. Like, we know this from Eleanor talking about it. We know this from history. Like, that fort is important. So sure, anyone in the crew who thinks far enough ahead, which is obviously not all of them, will understand that this is a very dangerous thing they're doing. But he seems to be doing a good job of riling them up at the same time. Right. So yeah, the thing that's most interesting to me about about Silver being unhappy is, again, I feel like this points to their partnership being more solidified.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the question still sits there, and I would love to know what's going on in Silver's mind there. But the part that I do understand is that if Silver is comfortable enough to show his displeasure, then, he's way more comfortable in his partnership with Flint than we've ever seen him be before. I mean, this is the first time that he's not just like doing everything in the world to prove himself to Flint. He's actually speaking his mind. Yes.
Yeah. And relying on Silver to just do the thing. Yeah.
Right. So we might have to leave the question of what's going on with Silver for next episode. I don't remember if we find out more about Silver's attitude about this action. But the partnership is an interesting progression. It's an interesting new thing for us that we see them being more partners than they have ever been.
Right.
Ready to guns! Full complement!
Okay, so we started this whole game based on this whole thesis statement concept. And I am actually a bit stumped this time. This was not what I was expecting. Honestly, in the span of our conversation, I might be leaning more towards one thesis statement than the other.
Okay.
So do you have a thesis statement, or would you like me to just propose mine?
I didn't have one. So you go ahead and propose yours, and I'll see. Maybe I'll break the tie for you.
Okay. Well, my first one that I thought of, which is now the one I think is less likely the thesis statement, was in the beginning, the one that you said, where Flint talks about how if you give a man power on an island, he soon learns. Okay, so that was my first one. I don't think that's it anymore. I think that this whole episode has been about us watching Flint shape his reality. And so my new theory is that I think it's what Miranda says to him in the carriage, that you're someone who's very good at managing how you're perceived and getting what you want without anyone knowing how you did it.
Yeah, I think I'd be more inclined to go with that one because it also speaks to Vane and Ned Lowe and to Max. So, yeah, I think that's the one.
Yeah, I think it's too. So, sorry guys, didn't have as definitive a one this week as last week, but we're still going to play our game. So, we're going to continue this every episode through the end of season 3 and maybe in season 4. I don't know. So we wanted to now give a little something fun to everyone who got the same thesis statement as we do for episode 10.
Uh-huh. Well, okay, I've got my list here. The first one was Jen Riley. Jen Riley, you get a pirate name. We're calling you Red-Handed Jen. And then Suru. Suru, you get to be Silver Suo Shandy. And Kim Clark of K. Clark Photography gets to be Quick Click Clark. I really like that one a lot.
I like that too.
And then Lynette, who actually got to go on a ship in British Columbia. Today. Yeah, as we're recording. You get to be Tanbark McLeary.
Awesome.
So there's your pirate
All
names.
Right.
Way to go, gals. We're so proud.
We are so proud. You are our official pirates this week. So keep playing with us. We will announce each week and just quote the tweet that we tweet out with your thesis statement, and we'll see who gets the same as us.
Yeah. All right. So that wraps us up this week. Thank you so much for joining us on Fathoms Deep, and we'll see you again next week. Until then, from Common Room Radio, I am Liz Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive.
Fathoms Deep is a Common Room Radio production. For more information and access to other programs, please visit us at commonroomradio.com. To show your support, pledges of as little as $1 a month can be made to patreon.com/commonroomradio. Join the conversation by using the hashtag FathoMsDeep and follow us on Twitter at BlackSalesCast. We ask that you keep your tweets respectful and positive, and please avoid spoilers. If you have more to say, we want to hear it in all its spoiler glory. Email us at podcast@commonroomradio.com with Fathoms Deep in the subject line. Thanks for listening.